Well, we've just feasted and are entering the most no-holds-barred season of eating on the calendar. So here's something fun. Let's talk about gluttony. Let's be honest. We don't think of gluttony as a sin. Not a real sin. It's not like drunkenness, is it? Well, I have to tell you, and this may come as a surprise, it's actually just like drunkenness from the biblical perspective. Even just a little time spent in the Old Testament, in a book like Proverbs, reveals that the Bible regularly places the sin of drunkenness and gluttony side by side. For instance, Proverbs 21:17 says, "Whoever loves pleasure will be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not be rich," with oil touching on the idea of gluttony because of its use to anoint guests at feast. More explicitly, Proverbs 23:20 says, "Be not among drunkards or gluttonous eaters of meat." So there we have a thou shalt not passage talking about gluttony and drunkenness in the same breath. They show us that overindulging in alcohol is akin to overindulging in food. So gluttony is a real sin. But why? Well, it's obviously not because God doesn't want His people to enjoy a meal. It's actually quite the opposite. The Bible speaks of wine and food as gifts from God. And keep in mind that many of the festivals of the Old Testament were feasts, where food was abundant. So a glutton is not someone who eats a big enjoyable meal. A glutton isn't someone who enjoys their Thanksgiving meal or Christmas feast or even a big meal each week. But there is a line that shouldn't be crossed for alcohol or food. And the key to knowing where the line is and why gluttony is a sin rests in the meaning behind the Old Testament word we translate into English as gluttony. The root Old Testament Bible word from which the English word for gluttony comes means thoughtless. So gluttony is the sin of thoughtlessly overindulging. It's the sin of eating mindlessly. Think of it this way. It's the idea of entitlement in eating. It's declaring, I deserve more than is necessary for me to have as a pattern of life. Compare that with how the Bible talks about receiving food. The early church met for their services in homes over a meal. And Acts 2:46 says that when the earliest Christians did this, they received their food with glad and generous hearts. So they were thankful for the food they had been given, and they were willing to share their food with others. Mindless eaters, gluttonous eaters, aren't glad, thankful eaters. Instead, in consuming their food mindlessly, they are not keeping in mind that God has given us the food we need, which leads to a lack of generosity. How? Because they're essentially saying that they deserve more than what God has provided. They aren't eating the food they need, they're eating the food they want. They are eating the food they think they deserve. So this holiday season, let's eat mindfully of God's provision for us. Let's consume with joy the food that we need. Let's be aware of when we are crossing the line from need to excessive want. And let's be generous to share our tables and our lives with others. Want to talk about something else? Just ask by emailing justask@bluevalleychurch.org.